Last night, Duck and his parents had a massive blowout argument. It was a familiar fight. His parents demanded he focus on his university exams, while the high school senior insisted on playing the drums. Everyone went to bed angry. But the next morning, Duck wakes up to a loud, unfamiliar knock. He opens his front door to find two strange men in plain clothes. They claim to be police, tell him he's implicated in a serious crime, and march him out to an unmarked Jeep. As they drive, panic starts to set in. The Jeep rolls right past the local police station. 30 minutes later, they pull up to a massive compound surrounded by a 3-meter wall topped with barbed wire. Duck had not committed a crime. He was the victim of a kidnapping orchestrated by his own parents. His specific offense was using a VPN to watch drum tutorials on YouTube. Inside this compound, that ordinary adolescent behavior was treated as a dangerous pathology requiring aggressive eradication. To understand how a teenager ends up in a cell for watching drum videos, we have to look at China's massive tech boom in the early 2000s. Across the country, 24-hour internet cafes, known as Wangba, became a widespread digital refuge for millions of young people. These cafes offered an escape into vast digital worlds like World of Warcraft. But this newfound freedom collided directly with the cutthroat academic pressure imposed by their parents, a generation raised long before the internet, who viewed perfect test scores as the absolute requirement for a successful life. The tension boiled over when extreme headlines began dominating the news. Reports surfaced of teenagers setting a deadly fire after being denied entry to a cafe, and kids apparently dying of exhaustion after 20-hour gaming binges. Parents across the nation were terrified. The government quickly weaponized this parental fear. In 2005, a Beijing judge claimed that over 90% of crimes committed by minors were caused by the internet. This designation transformed a standard generational divide into a national security crisis. 3 years later, the state took definitive action. In 2008, China officially classified internet addiction, known as Wangyin, as a clinical psychiatric disorder. The criteria for this new disease required zero scientific rigor. Doctors did not measure the actual hours a child spent online. Instead, symptoms like poor grades, general depression, or even dating someone your parents disapproved of were sufficient for a clinical diagnosis. This created a convenient catch-all. Teenage rebellion, alternative hobbies, and academic fatigue were filtered into one medical label. Most importantly, that label carried legal weight. It granted parents immediate authority to relinquish guardianship, sign a contract, and forcibly commit their children without consent. Wangyin lacked the empirical basis of a real medical condition. It functioned as a state-sanctioned legal loophole designed to criminalize adolescent nonconformity. To sell this diagnosis to the public, the state-run broadcaster CCTV released a documentary titled Fighting the Internet Demon. It publicly condemned online gaming as digital heroin, whipping desperate parents into a frenzy. The state marketing campaign fueled a highly lucrative network of private treatment centers. The vast majority of these facilities were military-style boot camps, opened and operated by former officers of the Chinese army. Inside, detainees faced a grueling daily reality. The prescribed therapy consisted of endless military marches, terrible food, and constant physical abuse by the guards. Detainees who stepped out of line were frequently thrown into 10 days solitary confinement. But physical exhaustion was just the baseline. In the Shandong district, a psychiatrist named Yang Yongxin, known affectionately by parents as Uncle Yang, developed a celebrated method he called brainwaking. His treatment took place behind the closed doors of room 13. There, Uncle Yang pinned teenagers down, inserted mouthguards to prevent them from biting through their tongues, and administered unlicensed, skull-rattling electroconvulsive therapy. The shockwaves lasted for several minutes at a time while the patients were entirely conscious. The electricity served zero medical purpose. The shocks were applied repeatedly and continuously until the excruciating pain forced the teenager to apologize, admit they were sick, and promise total obedience to their parents. With full approval from the state and military, a system of profit-driven torture was successfully disguised and widely celebrated as a benevolent healthcare intervention. The silence inside the camps eventually broke. Teenagers who survived Room 13 took to the internet to expose the atrocities. This sparked a massive, organized public outcry, led heavily by the Chinese World of Warcraft community, demanding an immediate end to the abuse. Mainstream media picked up the story, and public perception shifted. By July of 2009, under immense pressure, the Chinese government officially banned the use of electroshock therapy for internet addicts. But the ban was easily bypassed. Uncle Yang simply rebranded his exact same torture method as electronic acupuncture, keeping Room 13 operational for nearly another decade. Today, similar abusive facilities remain open across the country. They survive because they maintain deep protective ties to local government branches, and because there is still a steady demand from parents willing to pay for an immediate fix for a disobedient child. The teenagers originally locked in these compounds are now adults, and many are still grappling with the deep psychological scars left by a system explicitly designed to break their will and force them into conformity. The institutionalization of internet addiction provided a brutal, state-sanctioned mechanism to enforce absolute obedience on a generation discovering freedom online.